Scriptural origins and historical interpretations. The names Gog and Magog appear across the sacred texts of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, evoking fear, curiosity, and deep theological reflection. Though the names remain the same, their identity, origin, and role are interpreted differently across these traditions. Each faith views Gog and Magog not merely as historical tribes but as symbols of chaos, destruction, and divine testing in the end times. Understanding their scriptural origins helps reveal why they occupy such a powerful place in eschatological narratives. In the Hebrew Bible, Gog and Magog appear in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Gog is described as a prince from the land of Magog, from the far north, leading a coalition of nations against the land of Israel in the last days. Ezekiel prophesies that Gog will attack a peaceful, unsuspecting Israel, but God will intervene directly. Through a massive divine judgment involving earthquakes, fire, and brimstone, God will destroy Gog and his armies. This will be a public display of divine power, affirming God's sanctity and justice to all nations. The imagery is apocalyptic, but it is rooted in national defense and the vindication of Israel. In Christianity, Gog and Magog reappear in the book of Revelation, chapter 20. Here, they are presented not as specific tribes, but as symbols of the enemies of God. After the 1,000-year reign of Christ, Satan will be released from his prison and will gather Gog and Magog from the four corners of the earth to surround the camp of the saints. This event marks the final rebellion against God before the end of time. Just like in Ezekiel, divine fire will consume them, and Satan will be cast into eternal punishment. In Christian theology, this narrative does not focus on a literal battle in Israel, but on the cosmic confrontation between good and evil at the very end of human history. In Islam, Gog and Magog are known as Yajuj and Majuj and are mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Kahf 18:94, 99 and Surah Al-Anbiya 21:96. They are depicted as corrupting and destructive forces released near the end of time. The Quran describes a righteous king named Dhul-Qarnayn who built a massive iron barrier to trap them between two mountains. The barrier was meant to hold them back until the appointed time. In Hadith literature, it is said that when this barrier breaks, Gog and Magog will swarm the earth in huge numbers, destroying everything in their path. They will be so numerous that even drinking from rivers will leave nothing behind. Eventually, they will be destroyed not by human hands, but by divine intervention, such as worms or diseases sent by God. Despite the differences in narrative details, all three traditions portray Gog and Magog as agents of destruction who will appear in the final stages of the world. They symbolize chaos unleashed before the divine judgment and renewal. Whether understood literally or symbolically, their emergence marks a turning point when humanity will face its greatest trial before divine truth is fully revealed. Role in end times and global impact. In the theology of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the appearance of Gog and Magog is directly tied to the final chapters of human history. These entities are not minor actors but play a central role in the global upheaval that precedes divine judgment. Though their portrayal varies between traditions, they are consistently seen as harbingers of immense destruction, testing the faith of nations and shaking the foundations of the world. In Judaism, the War of Gog and Magog is considered the last great battle before the Messianic age. Rabbinic literature often interprets the prophecy of Ezekiel as symbolic of future geopolitical conflict, where nations hostile to Israel will gather under the leadership of Gog. This confrontation is seen not simply as a military invasion but as a spiritual challenge. Jewish tradition holds that this war will be the final purification, after which the Messiah will arrive to establish peace, rebuild the temple, and restore the Davidic kingdom. The devastation caused by Gog and his allies will reveal the futility of opposing God's will. Though interpretations differ, some taking the war literally, others metaphorically, all agree it signals the transition to divine redemption. In Christianity, particularly in apocalyptic theology, Gog and Magog re-emerge after the millennial reign of Christ, as mentioned in Revelation 20. After 1,000 years of peace under Christ's direct rule, Satan will be released one last time to deceive the nations. He will gather Gog and Magog to form a vast army from all corners of the earth, surrounding the camp of the saints. This is not a war over territory, but a global spiritual rebellion against God. Fire will descend from heaven to destroy them, and Satan will be cast into the lake of fire for eternity. Christians interpret this as the final, ultimate rebellion that proves the necessity of God's eternal kingdom and the weakness of human nature without divine grace. In Islam, the release of Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog, is considered one of the major signs of the Day of Judgment. According to Hadith, they will emerge after the return of Jesus Isa and during the leadership of the Mahdi. Once freed from their ancient barrier, they will spread corruption and devastation across the earth. Their numbers will be vast, and they will overwhelm human resistance. Even Jesus and the believers will retreat to the mountains, praying for divine rescue. God will answer by sending a disease or creature that will destroy Gog and Magog overnight. Their bodies will rot and fill the earth with stench, until God sends birds to carry them away. Rain will purify the land, and peace will return before the final judgment. Across all three faiths, Gog and Magog represent the final storm before the dawn. Their rise brings terror, confusion, and destruction, but also purification and clarity. In every tradition, their defeat is followed by divine justice and the promise of a new era, where the sovereignty of God will be fully realized, and falsehood will never rise again. Symbolism, theological meaning, and modern interpretations. While the figures of Gog and Magog are rooted in ancient scripture, their meaning has never been confined to a single time or place. Across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, their legacy extends far beyond literal prophecy. The names have become symbols of deep spiritual truths, representing chaos, rebellion, and divine testing. Over centuries, religious scholars and modern thinkers have debated whether Gog and Magog are real historical nations, mythical enemies, or metaphors for larger patterns of moral decay and worldly arrogance. In Judaism, Gog and Magog are often interpreted as symbols of those who rise against divine order, particularly against the covenant between God and Israel. While Ezekiel's vision names specific geographical regions, many rabbis and commentators have viewed the prophecy as representing the final ideological and military threats to God's chosen people. Some scholars suggest that Gog and Magog represent the universal struggle between good and evil, where Israel is not just a nation, but a symbol of God's promise. The war itself, whether literal or spiritual, is seen as the final test before the establishment of the Messianic age. In modern times, some Jewish thinkers have linked Gog and Magog to existential threats facing the Jewish people, such as anti-Semitism, war, and moral decay. In Christian theology, Gog and Magog are closely tied to the concept of ultimate rebellion against God's kingdom. Their mention in the book of Revelation serves as the final event before the eternal judgment. Some Christian traditions view them literally, expecting a global military alliance to rise in the end times. Others interpret them symbolically, representing the enduring nature of evil in the human heart, even after long periods of peace. Over time, Christian writers have used the names Gog and Magog to represent empires or ideologies seen as hostile to Christianity. In the medieval and modern eras, they have been linked to a range of enemies, from invading armies to corrupt political systems. This reflects a deeper theological concern, that the spirit of rebellion can arise at any time and must always be met with steadfast faith. In Islam, the presence of Yajuj and Majuj is treated seriously in both literal and allegorical terms. Traditional scholars have mostly described them as real tribes who will reappear, while some modern interpretations suggest that they could represent civilizations, ideologies, or global powers spreading corruption and materialism. Their sheer number and destructive force symbolize a collapse of moral and social order at the end of time. The fact that only divine action can stop them reinforces the belief that human solutions will fail without guidance from God. Contemporary Muslim scholars also explore the ethical lessons of their story, warning against arrogance, heedlessness, and over-reliance on worldly strength. In all three religions, Gog and Magog serve as a mirror reflecting humanity's darkest instincts: aggression, pride, and spiritual blindness. Yet their story ends in divine victory. Whether read as prophecy or parable, their purpose is clear: to remind believers that in the end, falsehood will fall, and only the truth of God will remain.